Well, good morning, or if it's afternoon, year 10. I thought what I'd do is I'd make some short videos that just set out exactly how we're structuring the course. It will give you some activities to do, and it will also allow you to understand what we're trying to achieve also when we're back in school itself. So first of all, to explain, the course itself is made up of 60 years, and all we do is we look at 4 timelines that occupy those 60 years of American history that we're trying to understand. Okay, so this is the exam board textbook, and if you can see there then, the 60 years that we deal with runs from circa 1835 to circa 1895. So the way that we do the timeline is we use that date at the start of every timeline. So if you come up to the end here, so we start the timeline circa 1835, and then we move through all the events here on the first timeline. We'll go through those in a minute, and then you end up with a date at circa 1895 at the end. So anytime you're writing the timeline out, the best thing to do is just to draw a long line landscape in your books and put the dates 1835 at one end and 1895 at the other. Okay, so those are the 2 dates, the one that starts the course and the one that ends it. What the examination board actually do then is they decide that there are 2 other dates that just actually split any of the timelines into 3 parts. So let's just have a quick look. So start date again, 1835, and then the next date, which gives you a period, the first period from circa 1835, is actually then the date here, which is 1862. So the first period of time you look at on any of the timelines is from 1835 up to 1862. Then the second period of time runs from 1862 up to the other date you see just here, which then is 1876. So that gives you 3 parts on the timeline if you just zoom out again. So you start at 1835, you go up to 1862, then up to 1876, and finally 1895. So again, if you're setting your timeline out, 1 line across a landscape page, and then you need those 4 dates on it. Okay. So the first timeline that we study is called the timeline of migration and settlement. So this is the one we've been working on first of all. So that's the title for your timeline you're doing. Now, so far, when we started in class and then we've been off for a period of a couple of weeks, we looked at the first period of time. So if you look just here, you're looking at those 2, 4, 6, 7 cards there that you should have done a revision card for each of them now. So just to check those through one at a time, the first date you need on there is 1836, the establishment of the Oregon Trail. 1837, the economic crisis. A card without a date, but it explains the problems that migrants had of travelling on the Oregon Trail. Then into the infamous Donner Party migration of 1846. Then the far more successful Mormon migration of 1847, into then where you get a flood, keyword a flood of migration in 1849 with the gold rush in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And then just before we end that period of time, you've seen that some white farmers started to try and settle for the first time on the plains states. So those are the first 7 cards that you should have created so far. Okay, so our focus for the next few lessons, and you'll find these lessons on Google Classroom with this video on there as well, is we need to look at the second period of time from 1862 to 1876. Now, the first thing to tell you, and this is the most important thing about the migration and settlement timeline, is that from the period 1862 right through to the end of the period, the migration and settlement here is all about migration and settlement onto the area of land that we call the Great Plains, if you remember from when we draw the maps out the very start of the course. So let's zoom in and have a look at the revision cards that we're making in the next few lessons. So what you've got is you've got revision cards 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And the notes for these are actually within the first lesson that you're doing. So if you'd like to complete them all straight away, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Now the first revision card is an event that actually starts a year just before that date, 1862. But it is a circa date, and remember the small c means around that time. And it's looking at the famous story of the American Civil War in America. And in the lesson today, you'll see a video again actually about the Civil War itself. Now the Civil War lasted from 1861, you can see, to 1865. But a year after the Civil War, and this will be revision card 9, there were two acts of government that were passed called the Homestead Act and the Pacific Railroad Act. We'll be learning a lot about those two important acts in American history. In 1869, what this card means is this is when the railroad was actually completed that connected the east of America to the west. So it comes out of the Pacific Railroad Act itself. Within 7 years, a railroad was built that ran all the way across the continent of America. The next revision card is described as the solutions to white settlement farming. So as more people came onto the plains, what you'll find is they started to come up with some potential solutions to those problems of trying to farm the plains that we learnt about on the earlier revision card. And then finally, one more act, something called the Timber Culture Act of 1873. When we move on to learn about the final period of time on the timeline of migration and settlement, luckily there are only two events that the exam board would like us to know things about. They're called the Exoduster Movement of 1879, and then a wonderfully strange but fascinating event called the Oklahoma Land Rush of 1889. So that's just to show you the last two events so that you'd be able to draw the timeline out completely and practice it as much as you can. So, just to review, it's important you can draw the timeline of migration and settlement out. Let's remind ourselves of those 4 dates. The first date, circa 1835. The second date, circa 1862. The third date, circa 1876. And the final date, circa 1895. When we finish this timeline, you'll end up with 14 revision cards on that particular timeline.